"What are Archie and Lilibet like?" someone asked Doria, Meghan's mom. She replied softly, almost to herself, "I haven't really seen them." That short, quiet answer froze everyone who heard it. You could feel the room change. Doria, Meghan's own mother, the woman closest to her, should have spent plenty of time with those kids. Birthdays, holidays, visits at their home in California. But she hadn't, and that one small confession left everyone stunned. If Meghan's own mother hadn't really been with Archie and Lilibet, then who had? That's where it all starts, because what Doria quietly said in private would later be confirmed by someone else, the nanny who actually worked inside Meghan and Harry's house. And when she spoke, her words changed everything people thought they knew. When Meghan's old nanny and the housemaid finally decided to talk, they didn't sound like people chasing headlines. Their tone carried the kind of unease that comes from things you wish you could forget. Not from what they saw, but from what was missing. Their voices were hidden, but the story cut straight through the noise. The woman explained that behind all the glamorous photos, the house itself felt strange. It didn't feel alive, she said. It wasn't a home where kids ran around. It looked staged. Every room was spotless, almost too perfect, like it was prepared for a film shoot and no one ever came back to live in it. What disturbed her most was the silence. In all the months she worked there, she never noticed the normal mess that follows children. No laughter, no toys, no tiny shoes near the doorway. At first, Meghan would appear 3 or 4 times each week, but she never stayed long and she was never by herself. Marcus Anderson was often beside her, sometimes a blonde assistant, sometimes a full crew with cameras. Meghan came in quickly, always on her phone, giving directions, checking mirrors. To everyone on staff, it felt less like they were in a family home, and more like they were keeping up a set for production. As time went on, her visits dropped to only 2 days a week. The workers began whispering that she seemed more like a guest than a parent. Whenever she showed up, someone was filming. Every gesture, every bit of conversation looked practiced, as if it had been rehearsed. The maid realized something unsettling. The mansion didn't belong to a family. It belonged to an image. Meghan wasn't trying to build a household. She was shaping a brand. That carefully polished image didn't hold for long. One night, angry voices echoed through the halls. The maid was in the kitchen when she heard Meghan shouting, sharp and furious. She hurried toward the noise and stopped in shock. Harry had his hands on Meghan's arms, pleading with her to calm down while she tried to strike him. He didn't look enraged, he looked defeated. His face was flushed, not from anger but from humiliation. Marcus Anderson stepped between them, pulling Meghan away as Harry dropped into a chair, silent and broken. When the argument finally ended, Harry dropped into a chair, his hands trembling. The maid quietly poured him a glass of water and set it beside him. He whispered a soft "thank you," and for a second she saw it, the look of a man completely drained. Once celebrated as the pride of Britain, he now sat in a house that no longer felt like his own. After that night, something shifted. The warmth in the home disappeared. The smiles faded, and though the cameras kept filming, the life inside those walls began to fall apart. As the days turned into weeks, the maid noticed something even stranger. It wasn't just that Meghan and Harry's relationship seemed forced, it was that the family everyone believed lived there might not have been there at all. Then came the revelation that shocked everyone who heard her speak. The maid said she worked 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week, for months. In the beginning, she saw Meghan almost daily, but later only twice a week. And still, she swore she had never seen Meghan pregnant, not once. No bump, no physical changes, no morning sickness, nothing that showed she was expecting a baby. She explained that when Meghan wasn't around, the staff quietly discussed it among themselves. One would ask, "Did you notice anything?" And another would whisper back, "Nothing." Meanwhile, the outside world saw magazine covers showing Meghan glowing, smiling in designer clothes with her hands over her stomach. The maid couldn't believe it. "None of it matched the woman I saw in that house," she said. "I never saw her pregnant. Not with Archie, not with Lilibet, not once." She knew people would question her, accuse her of making it up, but she didn't seem to care. "If I lie now," she said quietly, "the truth will still come out later, and then I'll be called a liar anyway." Her voice was calm, almost steady, but that made every word feel heavier. She wasn't angry or emotional. She didn't sound like someone spreading stories. She sounded like someone simply describing what she'd lived. And to her, the biggest truth was that something about those pregnancies never made sense. As strange as that sounded, it wasn't even the scariest part. Because during all those long work days and lonely nights in that mansion, the maid never saw Archie or Lilibet. Not once. She arrived before sunrise and often left after dark, sometimes past 6. Yet there were no signs that kids lived there. No toys, no tiny shoes, no baby clothes hanging outside, no laughter, no cries. The place was spotless, still, almost too quiet. She said that one day she finally asked another staff member in a low voice, "Do you ever see the children?" The woman shook her head and answered softly, "Never." That silence began to bother her. It just didn't add up. The world saw Archie and Lilibet as the center of Meghan and Harry's new life, but the people working inside those walls couldn't find a trace of them. The maid said sometimes when she was cleaning late at night, she'd stop and listen, hoping to hear even the faintest sound of a child. A laugh, a cry, footsteps, anything. But there was nothing. Only that deep humming silence that makes your stomach twist. And as the weeks turned into months, that question grew louder and louder in her mind. Where were the children? When Netflix finally released Meghan and Harry's big documentary, the world saw exactly what it expected. The perfect couple, the adorable children, the perfect life. There were clips of Meghan glowing, her hands resting on her belly, standing in warm sunlight like a picture out of a magazine. There were clips of Meghan and Harry playing with their kids in a garden, laughing beside a chicken coop. The maid sat alone one night and watched the entire documentary. At first she was just curious, but then her hands began to shake. The house she saw on the screen didn't match the one she had worked in for months. The layout was wrong, the lighting was different. Even the garden didn't look the same. She knew every detail of that mansion, the hallways, the windows, the corners of each room. And what she saw on Netflix wasn't it. To her, those family scenes looked filmed somewhere else, maybe a rented place or a set, but definitely not the house where she worked. That realization hit her hard. If those videos weren't real, what else was staged? She turned off the TV and sat in silence. For the first time, she began to wonder if Meghan's image as a glowing, perfect mother was just another performance. The longer she thought about it, the more the pieces fit together. The strict rules, the phone checks, the bag inspections. Every morning before work, the staff had to hand over their phones. Security guards would check pockets for hidden cameras. Inside, every movement was watched. No pictures, no messages, no private conversations. The maid said it felt like a fortress, not a home, a place built to lock secrets inside, not to keep people safe. She often asked herself, why all the control? What are they afraid of people seeing? Each time she tried to brush it off, something would happen to remind her how real it was. One day, she saw a worker quietly snap a photo of flowers by the front door. Within minutes, a guard stormed in, demanded the phone, and deleted the picture. The mood after that turned ice cold. It became clear to her that Meghan and Harry weren't protecting their privacy. They were protecting a version of their life, a story no one inside was ever allowed to question. And the more they hid, the more she felt there was something bigger they didn't want the world to know. Everyone remembers the Oprah interview, Meghan and Harry sitting together, chickens clucking behind them, talking about their peaceful new life in California. It looked soft, warm, perfect, but the maid said she'd seen that same chicken coop many times. She'd cleaned around it, seen Meghan walking out in fancy boots, feeding the hens while someone filmed her from afar. Yet she never once saw Archie or Lilibet there. To her, that chicken coop wasn't a real family moment. It was a prop, a backdrop for the story Meghan wanted everyone to believe. She remembered watching that Oprah scene and feeling her heart sink. The scene looked perfect, glowing light, laughter, that cozy image of family life. But the maid knew it wasn't real. Every smile, every moment of joy, it all felt rehearsed. That was the turning point for her. The moment everything inside that mansion started to make sense. The strange quiet, the missing signs of childhood, the constant secrecy, it all lined up. The world was watching a dream, but the people living it were trapped inside something hollow. She never meant to share her story publicly. Her voice was altered in interviews because she was terrified, afraid people would call her a liar, afraid of the backlash. But after months of holding it in, she couldn't stay silent. "I won't say Meghan was pregnant when she wasn't," she told the interviewer. "I won't lie. I never saw those children, not once." Her words were calm, steady, and too honest to ignore. She wasn't shouting, she was just telling what she knew to be true. Day after day, 12 hours at a time, she lived behind those gates. Cameras flashed, guards watched, conversations were staged, and through all of it, the children everyone believed were there never appeared. Some nights she'd pause mid-cleaning and think of Harry, how exhausted he looked, how distant, and she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe he saw it too, the cracks in the perfect picture forming right in front of him. The Netflix series showed the world a glowing mother, a happy home, two perfect children, but for the people inside it was a different story. one of control, silence, and fear. And while the world kept believing the polished version, whispers inside the mansion started to spread. There were rumors among staff, new questions about what was being hidden, and talk of others who might finally step forward. Because this story, the maid hinted, was far from over. After the maid spoke out, the atmosphere inside the house changed overnight. The once silent halls felt heavier, like everyone suddenly knew something they weren't supposed to. People avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when someone walked by. It was as if every worker could sense that a secret was slipping out, and no one wanted to be the next person caught in it. One cleaner whispered that certain rooms were always locked, even when Meghan wasn't there. Nobody was allowed inside. Not security, not housekeepers, not even maintenance. Another worker swore that children's toys would appear in the garden before photo shoots, only to disappear by morning. It was all too precise, too controlled, like the illusion was being managed in real time. Soon, everyone had their own story. Staff were called into meetings and handed new non-disclosure agreements. The language was sharper this time, warnings about false statements and misleading observations. Phones were checked more often. Private conversations felt dangerous. The maid started to notice new cameras in the corners, red lights blinking where there hadn't been any before. She began to feel like she was being watched every second of every day. One night, unable to sleep, she sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. Her hands shook as she started typing an anonymous email to a journalist she once trusted. But before she could send it, she paused. Online, she saw something that stopped her cold. Anonymous posts from other people who claimed to have worked in the same house. Different names, different details, but the same unsettling truth. The silence, the missing kids, the sense that everything around them was staged. It was then she realized she wasn't alone. Others had seen it too. They were just as scared, just as unsure, but now they were talking. Quietly, secretly, they were all asking the same question. What was really happening behind those walls? It started small, just a short post on a blog that no one took seriously. Former staff member claims strange activity inside Meghan's home. At first, it sounded like just another rumor, but within hours, screenshots spread like wildfire. People on social media began digging, comparing old clips, matching backgrounds from interviews and photos. Something didn't add up. The walls looked different, the furniture didn't match, and in one picture, the windows were shaped completely differently. The more people looked, the stranger it got. By morning, the story had reached online forums and gossip pages. Some called it fake, others swore it explained everything. Then came a comment that changed everything. A man claiming to be a former security guard said, "Not everything filmed in that house was real." The post was deleted minutes later. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots were already everywhere. Suddenly, mainstream outlets began circling the story. They didn't name names, but their headlines hinted at something off about Meghan's picture-perfect home. Behind the scenes, her PR team went into overdrive. More family photos appeared online, more smiling videos, but eagle-eyed viewers noticed they were recycled. Same garden, same clothes, even the same expressions. The illusion looked desperate now. Inside the mansion, the air grew colder. Workers were quieter, the cameras moved closer, and the guards started patrolling longer hours. The maid said it felt like the walls were closing in. And while the world argued online, new details began slipping through private messages, little things only insiders would know. A locked nursery, unused children's clothes, staged laughter on film days. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to make people doubt what they were seeing. For the first time, the story had escaped, and no one could control it anymore. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. The maid's voice that had sparked the fire vanished completely. No new interviews, no anonymous posts, no leaks. It was as if she had never spoken at all. Some said she was forced into signing another NDA. Others whispered she had left the country under a new name. Journalists who tried to follow up claimed their sources went silent overnight. Emails bounced back, phones disconnected. Something or someone had shut it all down. But silence doesn't kill curiosity. It makes it grow. Online, people kept digging, comparing old footage, searching for inconsistencies. The debates were endless. Half of them called it lies. The other half said the truth was hiding in plain sight. And in the middle of it all, Meghan and Harry stepped out for public events, smiling for cameras, holding hands, acting as if nothing had changed. The world saw perfection again, but those who had watched closely could tell. Something in those smiles looked rehearsed. Something in their eyes didn't match the script anymore. Even Doria stayed silent. She never denied her quiet confession. She didn't defend her daughter or try to explain. That silence spoke louder than any denial ever could. The internet turned it into a storm of questions, theories, timelines, comparisons. Some claimed new insiders were ready to talk. Others said the truth would never come out. But the maid's final words still echoed in people's minds. I never saw them, not once. And now, after all the stories, the photos, and the perfect smiles, the question that started everything still hangs in the air, heavier than ever. If the people inside that mansion never saw the children, where were they?